Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. It is 11 a.m. Eastern, I think standard time, right? We're still in standard time. We're going to fall back shortly, but for this morning, still 11 a.m. in New York City. Welcome to our weekly live stream. In this live stream, I welcome you to join us in this sacred circle of creation where we get to be together, to go back and forth, to interact on all topics relating to mind body alignment. So, if you're with me this morning, hi, welcome. You can say a little hello in the chat if you want to. Let me know you're here. Your name might appear, but it might not. So make sure you write your name in the comments so I know who's here today. And I am particularly excited because mindful communication is a topic dear and near to my heart, as is taking responsibility. So I thought I would integrate those two and really start to expand what's possible when we practice the art of mindful communication in relationship to taking personal responsibility. So, welcome. Who's here on the live stream? Welcome to you. Please, hey, good morning. Julianne is here. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. All the way from the Caribbean, I think, right? Julianne, if you are still out there, what a pleasure to have you. Bonjour, bon matin, bienvenue. Super contente que tu sois là. Super contente que tu sois là. Yes, awesome. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to this week's Duchêne Method Acknowledge, Engage, Support weekly circle of creation where we come together. Hello, good morning from Maine. Who is in Maine? Oh my God, how awesome. Good morning, Nelson. Thank you for being here. Who is saying hello from Maine? Just write your name because I can't see your name. For some reason, I still have not figured out that technology. But this week, that is going to be my goal, to figure out the live stream technology so I know who's showing up and writing in the chat. So please let me know that you're here. Say hi, write your name. Oh, Carrie, awesome. Caroline, yay. Good morning. Hi, Carrie. So good to have you here. Good morning, Elise. Good morning, Elise. I'm so happy that you're here. Yes, of course, Carrie from HPS. I know very well who you are. Thank you for being here this morning. I want to dive into this topic of mindful communication and taking responsibility. And as I share information with you, the whole idea of why I do these live streams is because I want to create an interactive component to what's possible. So we're not all on together in a Zoom room where I can see you and where you can respond vocally, but certainly you can write comments in the chat. And that's what I want to invite you to do. If something rings a bell, if you have an idea, if something doesn't ring a bell, if you want to share part of your experience, part of what you are experiencing in relationship to our topic for the day, I definitely want to invite you to share that in the comments. So, very simply, the reason why I call this the Duchêne method is because I've evolved my coaching style and program, and I decided to brand my name because what it's really about is the very simple 3-step proprietary system that I've installed, which is to acknowledge, to engage, and to support. I strongly believe that in order for us to move more peacefully through the world, that we might want to explore the possibilities in acknowledging one another, in engaging with one another from a place of mindful communication and personal responsibility. And finally, to be able to support one another moving forward, to really choose our higher level of consciousness, to work together as a team that can support one another instead of the opposite, which looks a lot like what's going on in the world today on many levels. The gossiping, the belittling someone, the confrontational approach, the left, the right. to really come to a place where we can raise our level of consciousness and to practice these skills that can change and transform our lives, our health. It can heal us from disease. It can heal our body from chronic pain. And I know, because I've been working as a practitioner for 15 years, and I know that these conditions can be changed forever and for good. And a lot has to do with it, with the position we take in life in relationship to what shows up in our lives. And so today, through the art of mindful communication and choosing to take responsibility for ourselves, I think that there's a big recipe for success in that combination. And the first thing that I want to share with you is something I saw actually on Instagram. And these were 3 tips from Julia Dar. And Julia Dar is a world debate champion. You can find her on Instagram. So I was just scrolling and I saw her. And what she wrote about mindful communication and taking responsibility as a debate professional and champion, she says, become more curious over time when we are in relationship, in conversation with another. And this is particularly true and effective for those with whom we have an issue or a problem, or we don't like them, or we don't like their style of communication. I'm not suggesting you might become best friends with this person, but what I do want to invite you, in order to raise your level of consciousness and to become more proactive in your life, feel better, be more enlivened, is to become curious over time, as Julia Dar suggests. Become curious about who you're talking with. Become curious about the other person, instead of choosing to maybe belittle them or diminish who they are, because you already have an opinion, because this person has already demonstrated their personality and you don't like their personality. And so there's always an opportunity. Hey, I want to remind you, maybe there was a time in your life when you weren't that pleasant to communicate with, right? We come from a place where we've grown, we've evolved over time. There might be a time in your life when you were not very interesting to communicate with, or that you might have been more judgmental. Maybe you used to gossip more. So if you meet someone like that in your life, then perhaps we might give them the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps we might open up our curiosity and over time give people another chance. Give people another chance to become who they might become. And can I tell you that the way that that happens is oftentimes how we show up in supporting them. Remember the Duchêne method? Very simple: acknowledge, engage, support. So if we support another by giving them another chance to become curious about who they have become over time, we really not only raise our level of consciousness, but we raise the consciousness around us. Thank you. Something which helps me in that concerns, see the other person as another version of you. Beautiful. How would you like to be talked to? Beautiful. Is that you, Carrie, who wrote that? That's awesome. That's exactly right. To see the other person as another version of who we are. So the tendency, if we practice that, we might soften our approach, right? We might be more forgiving. Oh, Gilliane. Merci, Gilliane. You have to just write G at the end when you write a comment so that I know it's you. Merci, Gilliane. Yeah, so you see the other person as another version of who we are. Super, absolutely right. That tends to soften our hearts. Okay, so that was the first thing that she shared with us, to develop curiosity over time. The other point she said is to stay open to having your opinion changed. To stay open to having your opinion changed. And the reason I love that is because it reminds me to not hold on to my interpretation of what's right. It doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean that I don't have an interpretation. What she's suggesting is that change is omnipresent. Everything is changing. all the time around us. So is it possible that I might be able to open up myself to hear from a different perspective so that I don't stand in my righteousness? Because when we stand in our righteousness, a lot of the time, we accidentally, unconsciously, or sometimes consciously diminish the other person in front of us. So by maintaining this level of possibility of change, that I might hear someone's point of view differently. And remember to maintain that level of curiosity, right? Because when we remain curious, we might shift the way that we hear something. And that is a big deal in taking personal responsibility for what we're hearing and for how we communicate. And these are very simple points that we can integrate in our lives immediately. You can integrate it in your life today. So the third thing she says, so first thing was curiosity over time, to remain curious in your communication. Second one was to stay open to having your opinion changed. I love that one. Stay open to having the possibility of having your opinion changed. Open up the doors into your mind to see if there might be another way to see and view things. And finally, it's a question into what's a future possibility in this conversation. So this is really, I think, important, because if we can maintain a sense of openness in our relationships, in our communication style, by taking responsibility as to how we show up in the conversation, what's the possibility for the future of that conversation? And I think it's really important. And you know what? Let me know if you agree with me here. You might not, and that's fine. But if you agree with me, let me know in the comments. This is a time where we need to open ourselves up to the possibility of the future, because we are all living at a time of extreme destabilization. Things have shifted. It's not the same since before COVID. There is something that in the air is almost intangible. There's a shift in energy. Something has brought us into this different space. And most people, in my experience and in my work, can't really name it exactly. There's a shift. For some people, it looks like there's a lot more fighting, a lot more warring, a lot more not mindful communication, a lot of people being more selfish. And you know, when these components arise in our lives, it's mostly because we are afraid, because there's fear. So if we shifted our perspective when it comes to mindful communication and taking full responsibility for ourselves, if we shift our perspective into seeing what is the future in the types of conversations I'm having with people, whether you agree or not. Is there a future? Do you want there to be a future? And I think that this is a really important time for us to consider this, because truly the only thing, I truly believe this, the only thing that is going to change anything in the world is our power to come together as people, to support one another in whatever environments or networking or at work, wherever you are. You showing up responsibly and communicating from a heart of compassion, essentially, is what I'm talking about. And a heart of compassion does not mean that you are lovey-dovey and that everything is nice. It's much, much deeper than that. It's coming from taking a stance of listening, active listening, to really be curious about the other person, as opposed to coming into that conversation with judgment. It's about seeing if there's a future possibility in that conversation and what might you bring to the conversation. That's personal responsibility, right? You know the saying, a high tide rises all ships. A high tide rises all ships. I first heard that from one of my first business coaches, Fabienne Fredrickson, who is dear and near to my heart, this beautiful woman. And she would say that all the time, a high tide rises all ships. And I love that, because if we decide to be the high tide, if you choose to take personal responsibility in your life, in your community, with your family, and you keep showing up as that high tide, no matter the exterior consequences, it shifts the energy in the room. You take responsibility to rise all ships. I want you to consider that in your life. How do you show up in your environment? How do you show up at the gym? How do you show up at work? How do you show up when you have a Zoom call? How do you show up as a practitioner? To really make the effort to show up. And you know how you've heard people say showing up is enough? And I also agree that showing up is enough when we are in alignment. Showing up is not necessarily enough in the sense of if we show up and we're not in a good place, because that too is energetic, right? So it is a practice. There's a practice into molding ourselves into becoming the future of our own vision of ourselves. So it's really important to be able to integrate visionary exercises, to really envision yourself as who you want to be in the future, no matter what anyone says, no matter what any doctor, environment, politician says. The important thing is to continue to show up better every single day. And it doesn't mean that you need to do a song and dance. It simply means that you are in a space of alignment, that you're connected to your heart space, and you're willing to be in spaces with others to listen and to offer communication from a mindful place. Okay, I have a few comments here. I agree, but COVID has been an opportunity to stop and ask the real questions, facing our true selves. Yes, exactly. For some, for sure, COVID has been that opportunity. I totally agree with you, Julianne. Julianne says, COVID has been an opportunity to stop and ask the real questions, facing our true selves. For sure, that's been an opportunity for many. And for others, COVID has affected them in a negative way, that they really were despondent. They felt alone. Loneliness kicked in, that there was no place to go, that they felt trapped. And so that created also a chain of traumatic sensations in the body. And so by practicing this art of mindful communication, and as you're saying, Julianne, to really be able to face our true selves, it takes a lot of courage to do that. For a lot of us, we're not familiar with what it means to face our true selves. It's too much. So I think that in addition to exploring that possibility, it's in the tiny daily rituals of your life, what you choose to do, the small steps. And you've heard this a million times. The small steps that you take every single day, whether it's lighting a candle, whether it's lighting your incense, whether it's waking up and saying to yourself, I love myself. I'm thankful for my body. I appreciate that my body is working, that there are billions of functions occurring in my body right now that are right, that are correct. So this practice of gratitude really helps us to get to this place of being able to communicate with our true selves. And so if this is true, then if COVID has helped us to pause and to face our true selves, how is it that you changed? So Julianne, I'm directing this at you because you offered a very important point. So what does it mean for you to face your true self? How have you shifted? How have you changed over COVID? If it was a time of respite, of dropping in, of being with the reality that everything was shut down. So what happened to you? And this is not just for Julianne, this is for everyone who's on the call right now. You can write in the chat. How have you changed since COVID? Right? Have you become more enlivened by the possibility of not being in a pandemic? Has your heart softened or hardened? Are you more open, or do you find yourself being more closed? Give me some feedback in the chat. I'd love to hear where you are. And thank you, Julianne, for bringing these really great comments. I really appreciate that. This is what I mean. It gets the conversation going, right? So since COVID, what's happened to you? Are you better, or are you still in this state of instability? Are you still not sure? Do you even know what taking responsibility for yourself really means? And if not, that's totally fine. That's why we're here. That's why we're sharing space together to explore that possibility. So during COVID, Julianne says, I met you and had the great pleasure to be part of one of your programs. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Julianne. That's right. We did the Art of Mindful Communication program together. So I do have other programs that I offer. And the Art of Mindful Communication was one of those things that I did during COVID. I had a coaching program and I did these different courses online because we were on Zoom. So for me, what COVID offered me was the possibility to create new material, to decide that I was going to do this, that I was going to do these programs. And they weren't perfect. They weren't perfect. I didn't know as much as I know now about technology. There were glitches here and there. But the point is, we do our best. We put our best foot forward. And for me, it was an excellent opportunity to sit and to develop courses and interactions like this on Zoom. We had these live classes on Zoom where we could interact with one another, and we evolved into the art of mindful communication. And it's amazing what a small group of people can do together, because when we share our insights with one another, it helps us grow, because then you realize that someone else on the other side of the world, there was a global amount of a group of people who joined this course that I was teaching. And so we get different insights from people from all over the world. And so many times what we discover is that, of course, we're all related, that we're having the same questions, we're exploring the same issues from different perspectives, but certainly we are having a human experience. So thank you so much, Julianne, for sharing that. I appreciate it. Okay, so moving right along with a little bit of research that I did that I want to share with you in relationship to mindful communication and the power of taking personal responsibility in your communication style. And some of this I got from the American College of Healthcare Sciences. And the first thing I want to share with you on this topic is to really take Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey is an author who wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, an amazing book. I highly recommend it. And in it, he says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And let me see if I can put this in the chat with you all. Can I do this? Post a comment. Yeah, I can. Okay, awesome. Let me do this. So I want you to see this from me. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Julianne, I think you wrote something else. Then take little steps to see it as an opportunity. As you said, really helps to approach it. Yes, baby steps, everyday baby steps. What's that expression? People overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. So what does that mean? Is like throughout a decade, throughout years ahead of us, consistency, showing up, doing your best, tiny little steps. Sometimes it feels tedious. It feels like a super long road. And then all of a sudden, shoo, there's a shift. Something opens, a door opens up. Daily, consistent steps, 100%, Julianne. And so we can actually segue that comment, thank you, into seeking first to understand, then to be understood. That's a discipline to undertake at large. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I really want to bring that, massage that into your brains, into your body, to feel that into your body. What does it mean to seek first to understand, then to be understood? Well, the first thing that I think is an opportunity in what Stephen Covey wrote is to take a step back. So when I seek first to understand, I'm not trying to show up and to prove myself and to share more about me than I'm willing to listen from the other person. This is why I always talk about having a heart of compassion. That is specifically what I mean, an open heart of compassion, which doesn't mean that you are opening up your heart to the entire world in this way. No, that would be dangerous. That would be too much. To bring into balance, into your alignment, into center, what might it mean for you to first seek to understand, is there someone in your life that would benefit from you seeking to understand them? Think about it for a moment and give me a yes in the comment. You don't have to tell me who, but if you can relate to what I'm sharing right now, if there's someone in your life that would benefit from you seeking to understand them, give me a yes in the comments. Yes, excellent, right? So usually that's the case. A lot of the time, and those might be the more difficult people in your life. Awesome. Yes, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. It's that person that's more difficult to have the conversations with in your life. That's the one that you're seeking to understand. How might it benefit them to have you listen to them first instead of having to be understood first? Again, when we practice having an open heart of compassion, and it's a practice, we can stand in our line and actually listen to someone who's really seeking, who needs to be understood. Do you see how this works? It's benevolence. It's weaving through the possibility of becoming more present in our communication style, taking responsibility to be more benevolent, to work from a heart of compassion. So if there's someone in your life, and you might write it down, Who is that person in your life that would benefit from you listening to them instead of you having to interrupt or object or to say your part of the story? We're not saying that your part of the story is not important. Your part of the story is surely important. But what we're practicing here today is taking responsibility, remaining curious, seeing what's in the space between the other person and yourself. In Landmark, if any of you have done Landmark, I did Landmark many years ago, a wonderful program. I highly recommend it for all of you. You can Google it if you've never heard of it, Landmark. In Landmark, they have this very specific language, and they say, speak into their listening, or listen into their speaking. I love that. It makes it very active for me to listen into their speaking. So when someone is speaking to me, I really try to be with them. I really try my best, and again, it's not about the success rate of it. It's the practice of it. If you're fully present and in centered space, right? And you can actually listen into the other person's speaking. It's another way of saying, seek first to understand. It's a very benevolent approach, isn't it? But I think that if we practice that way of being, we, of course, get so much more. In a sense, it's that giver's gain relationship, where the more we give, right, the more we are able to stand and to listen, to be open to another, actually, the more we gain. And what we find over time is, if we can practice this, the emotional charge that you may have with this person that is not always easy to communicate with tends to diminish. We tend to become more embodied. And what that means is, being embodied in this case means that you get to really feel what shows up for you without having to react. You can just stand there and intake information from the other person and really listen into their speaking, because what you will find most of the time is that people have hurt in their life. They have pain in their life. They have confusion in their life. They want to be more open. They want to try to listen into another's speaking. But what happens when there's a lot of pent-up emotion, and when there's a lot of pent-up anger, or if you feel like you are someone who tends to be misunderstood in your life, well, we tend to be more aggressive, if that's the truth, because we have a point to prove. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. So our demeanor tends to become more aggressive instead of actually bringing ourselves into a place of alignment, of centering yourself from the heart. This is a real practice, and it takes time to become effective at it. However, as our friend Julianne said, Baby steps, every day, practicing, taking responsibility for how you are communicating with another. And communication starts, in my opinion, by listening, to become a real expert at listening. Listen into their speaking. Make sense? Thank you. Thank you for the yeses and for responding. So give me a heads up if this is making sense to you. If what I'm sharing with you, give me a 1 if this makes sense to you. Is this something that is useful that you can practice? Because what we want to do here is create an environment where you also can leave with some tools that you can practice immediately in the present moment. So give me a 1 if it makes sense, if you can relate to what I'm saying. So going on with seek first to understand, then to be understood. Such a simple and powerful phrase. But how can we understand someone else's point of view when we haven't looked closely at our own and at how it has been created? So this is very interesting, right? So our belief systems, what are our belief systems? Where do they come from? How were they created? Because partly what happens in life is we grow up, we become adults, and we have a certain set of belief systems that show up in our lives. And they may work, and some of them may not work anymore. And it's about having the courage to say, you know what? This doesn't work for me anymore. And for a moment, when we start to shift our belief systems and we become more open to listening to others, it can be a destabilizing moment, because we want to practice this heart of compassion thing, but at the same time, we really don't agree with the person said. So there's a lot of fine tuning along the way. And the best tool I can offer you to increase that skill, to increase that art form, is to go about it with kindness, not by being pushy or unkind to yourself. It's really by being able to be present with what is and to accept yourself exactly as you are in your moments of struggling, of how to learn to develop this art of mindful communication, and also the art of taking personal responsibility. Because we all know, excuse me, it's getting a little chilly and my nose is flowing. Sorry about that. So this practice of taking personal responsibility, I think, is so important, because we get out of the model of the blame shame. We get out of the model of blame shame. And when we get out of the model of blame shame, then we can cultivate from a heart of compassion. But if we're still blaming, shaming others, it's going to be very hard. Even though you may be right, even though you were hurt in the past, even though people said things that were wrong about you, this whole practice of taking responsibility for our part in those types of relationships, and I'm excluding the relationships of when you're a tiny little baby, okay? When you're a baby, when you're young, when you're being reared and grown, you can't take responsibility for yourself, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's not about that. So this idea of moving out of the blame shame, and that's also about us, to not blame shame ourselves for our past, for some of the things we might have said and or done in the past, to really develop a heart of compassion and to become more benevolent, first and foremost to ourselves, because that's really the way to be with others. So as the story goes, what's the question? How can we understand someone else's point of view when we haven't looked closely at our own and how it has been created? A point of view is very simply that, a point. It's not the truth. It's our point of view. It's my opinion. So oftentimes when I'm teaching, I'll say something like, in my opinion, and then I'll say, but it's only my opinion. It's not the truth. So notice how that feels in your body when I bring it up in this way. If I say to you, I did before, right? In my opinion, It's better to practice having a heart of compassion and to really embodying what we are feeling as opposed to blaming or shaming another. That's my opinion. I'm not saying it's the truth, but it has been my experience that this technique has been helpful in my life. So notice how that makes you feel in your body as I'm sharing my opinion with you, but I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm offering a perspective, and this is really important. This piece here, the art of mindful communication, is in the language and also from your body, from your energy. Because if you're sincere when you say, it's just my opinion, this is what I've observed, I'm not saying it's the truth, it's how I'm interpreting it. If you start to use this type of language, especially in conflictual conversations, you will go so much further because you're not taking the position of being right. There's nothing worse, and you know this too, if you're in conversation with another and they're always right. How annoying is that? Because there's no space. There's no space for curiosity in being right all the time. So to consider that possibility, a point of view is very simply that, a point. It's a spot from which we look at the world. Put another way, if the glasses we wear to filter our understanding of the world, it's the glasses we wear to filter our understanding of the world. A prescription unique to us and formed from our personal history. This is super powerful because it's really hard to have a different way of seeing things than in the way that I see them based on my background, where I'm from. Excuse me. Julianne writes, when you say, in my opinion, it lifts up the weight of a different point of view being wrong. It's just different. Awesome. Thank you, Julianne. So that's right. If I'm sharing information with you right now, I'm saying, hey, this is how it is. These are the truths. These are the points, and this is what you need to do. And if you don't do it, well, you're probably not going to succeed. I don't want anybody to tell me that. It's too harsh. You're too right. You have all the answers. And you could still be right. You can still be right because there's a lot of people teaching in the world that have beautiful ways of introducing their perspectives based on their life history, based on their experiences. The distinction, though, is that it's offered from their heart. So even if I said to you, in my experience, my truth, what I've learned to be true, is that when you have a set of daily rituals, especially in the morning, the priming, right? We just did this. We did this exercise. Carrie, you'll remember this for sure, right? I was just in a group of presenters, speakers, and we were practicing using our vocal energy, right? So when we are in a space of generosity, of being open, of opening ourselves up, the probability is that you're going to be willing to say, you know what, Anne-Marie, that's true. You're right. If I practice daily rituals every morning and I prime myself into feeling enlivened, vivacious, energetic, well, then the probability is you're going to feel better. So it must be true. But I'm not telling you what to do. I'm inviting you into an exploration. Notice the language and the words. I am inviting you into an exploration of what's possible based on my experience. It might not be the truth, and I have seen it work for many, many people, including myself. So because my focus in my work and in doing this work is to really acknowledge other human beings, really engage with other human beings, and really support other human beings. Why? Because my life is infinitely better when I am in connection, in communication with others. My life is infinitely better where I can be here with you having this interaction and you interacting with me. I feel more enlivened when I am with other human beings. It supports me. It helps me to grow. And so what do I do before I do these every single week is I get myself primed. I get myself into a state. I review my notes. I look for things that I hope will be most useful to you because you are consecrating perhaps an hour of your time in being with me. And so what raises the level of consciousness is when we show up prepared, energized, focused, with an open heart of compassion. It doesn't mean that we're perfect. It doesn't mean that we're flawless. It just means that we are committed to taking 100% responsibility for ourselves in how we communicate and being open to sharing, to interacting in this format. There is a lot to be said in this possibility, a lot. So thank you, Julianne and Carrie, also for your insights. Okay, so what did I say? The glasses we wear to filter our understanding of the world, a prescription unique to us and formed from our personal history, her story, their story. And since these glasses are unique to us, it makes our perspective unique as well. In other words, my understanding of other people, of situations, or of the world in general could be, and probably is, very different from yours. Right? So without a solid understanding of my own perspective, I can't truly understand yours. Without a solid understanding of my own perspective, I can't truly understand yours. But how can I gain more understanding of my own perspective? That's the $1,000,000 question, right? How can we shift that? I mean, I've developed this prescription for my glasses over the course of my whole life, right? So my belief system, my way of seeing things has been developed throughout my whole life. So how do I gain more understanding of my own perspective, right? So that I can become more neutral in my communication style by listening into your speaking. Prescriptions can change. Isn't that amazing about us humans? We can change our prescription, our viewpoints, our belief systems can change. And our eyes change. The way we view things, the way we hear things. It is so important to be able, this is why I talk about this benevolence possibility, about opening our hearts, so that we might be able to truly, it's raising our consciousness to be open to more possibility of how to communicate with others and to remove those prescriptive glasses. It doesn't mean that they're not good. It doesn't mean that they don't work. I'm inviting you into a circle of sacred, of creation, right? Creation is about being able to expand ourselves, about viewing things from another perspective, about being more benevolent towards another. Like, I think it was Julianne before who said, by putting yourself in someone else's shoes. How would your life change today if for today, as you go out into the world, you decided that everyone you meet has the best intentions? How would that change your life today? So you go to the bodega, you go to the supermarket, or you have a client. How would your life change today if you assumed that every person you meet had the best intentions, that they are doing their best in this world? We don't know another person's story. We don't know what they're going through. And sometimes people are harsh, and sometimes we take it personally. And that's a practice that I have found to be unuseful. I don't take things personally, or as little as possible. Sometimes we do, right? I'm not saying I never do. Sometimes I do take things personally. And I quickly notice that. I go into my body. I just check in and I'm like, if this is happening, I haven't done anything to upset or to poke. So if another person responds towards me in a certain way, I really do my best to not take it personally, because mostly when people project a sense of blame or shame on us, it's really a projection of how they are feeling, not necessarily who they are. And this is a hugely important distinction, because once we start to label people that they are that way, oh, she's just angry, or he's just full of himself. Once we label people a certain way, it diminishes the possibility for future conversations. Wouldn't you agree? So it's not so much that people are showing us who they are in retaliation or in blame shaming. It's more about how they feel inside, which goes back to my previous point about people feeling afraid or angry or sad or hurt. And we all have those sensations. We all feel those sensations. But how do you choose to step into the world and be a better version of yourself every single day? If we don't process our emotions, if we don't find help to get aligned and embodied, we keep those negative emotions inside, and they come out in all sorts of twisted ways. And through those twisted ways, we start to blame and shame others for our situation. The government is a perfect example. Why don't we just blame the government for everything? Because, they're not running this world properly. Yeah, but who votes for the government? All right? Who are we? How can we not see ourselves as those components that make up the whole? And in that way, in taking responsibility from a gentle, loving approach, that's how things start to shift. And, you can let me know what you think about this. But I think, from my experience, that when we become more vulnerable, that helps to shift the mindset. That helps us to become more tender towards others. Because when we're vulnerable, so for example, I was really sick in December of 2021, and I'm not a sickly person, but I was out. I was really out for several weeks. I was not well. And in that vulnerability, I realized how much I needed people to help me, how much I didn't want to be alone. When we're vulnerable, it helps to shift us so that we might soften. And I think that's part of the reason why we sometimes get hit across the head throughout our lives. Bad things happen to good people, that kind of thing. It helps us to become more vulnerable. And in the vulnerability, it helps us to open up to putting ourselves in another person's shoes, to not blame and shame or to gossip or to just label someone as being a certain way without giving them an opportunity to be someone else. Because if I'm honest with myself, I know that I've changed a lot over the years. I wasn't always wonderful. I didn't always say the right things. I certainly was judgmental many times. And so over time, what's possible for us is this practice of being honest and to see ourselves and to really identify where we might improve. And this is the whole point of why I'm doing these lives every week. What tools are we not using that we could be using to improve the quality of our lives and to change the perspective from which we see, to remove those filters and to be mindful of what we hear on a global scale of who's bad and who's good. The Russians are bad, the Ukrainians are suffering. Part of that is true, but not all Russians are bad. I have a lot of Russian friends who are wonderful people, right? So it's really important for us to broaden our horizon perspective and to shift that perspective, to open up what's possible, to use our vision of insight, to see beyond what's right in front of us, and to practice listening into another person's speaking. I have a question. I love questions. Thank you. Jillian asks, when you are triggered, someone says something you take personally, How to know the difference between the reflection of their trauma and ours. So I'm going to paraphrase to make sure I understood you. And if I did, just make sure you write yes in the comments. So your question is, when we're triggered, someone says something that we take personally, how to know the difference between the reflection of their trauma and ours. So in other words, if someone says something to me that triggers me and I take it personally, how do I know that how do I know that it's not, that they're reflecting their trauma on me and that it's not mine? So essentially what we're saying is that someone is imposing a certain way on you. So I'll give you an example in the hopes to respond to this question effectively. And Julianne, let me know if I understood it properly. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Excuse me. My nose is running today. So here's the thing. Here's what I believe. Here's what's been my experience. When we're triggered, it's usually when someone said something that hurts us, or someone said something to belittle us. That's why we get triggered. Somebody said something. I have an example. I had a friend recently who made a comment about, I said that I had offered someone something for their birthday, and without thinking about it, she said something like, "Oh yeah, that's going to be totally useless for them." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was triggered in the sense that, okay, that wasn't really nice, but okay, let that slide, because we can also choose, right, what we decide to engage with. So it's going to happen, Julianne. It's going to happen to you and to all of us, that someone triggers us. From that trigger, this is what I'm talking about, 100% responsibility. Don't get caught up in your mind in that moment trying to recognize if they're right or you're wrong, or you're right and they're wrong. When you're triggered, it's because something was said that hurts us. Taking full responsibility in that moment is not trying to identify if it's their trauma or your trauma. Taking personal responsibility when someone triggers us is to say something like, for example, like when my friend said that to me, I was surprised, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that hurt. I hope that my gift is not useless for this person, but that's what she said." Or that's what I heard her saying. That's what I heard her saying. So I'm not saying that those are not the words that she used, but I don't think that my friend wanted to purposefully hurt me. I don't think she said that on purpose. So you see, that's the number one piece of taking responsibility. When someone approaches us or says something that triggers us, first, you take it in and you're like, wow, okay, that wasn't very nice. The way to respond to that mindfully, if you're not too triggered, because if you're too triggered, you just leave you have to excuse yourself. We cannot be in conversation with people when we're triggered at that level. It's unhealthy. That's where arguments start. And it's not because you're running away. It's not because you're avoiding it. It's just that if you don't have the wherewithal to respond to someone who triggers you, it's not going to be a productive conversation. It is not going to be the art of mindful communication. What we can do, somebody says something that triggers us. Don't try to figure out who's right or wrong. Simply connect to how you are receiving it. Connect to your body. And then if it hurts, it's perfectly fine to say something like, wow, that really hurt me. I don't know where that's coming from, or I'm not sure why you're saying this right now, but that really hurt me, right? That's how my interpretation of it is, that it hurts me. I find this a hurtful thing to say. Is there another way that we could talk about this? Is there another way that we could expand upon this? So do you see what I mean? Instead of thinking about, is she projecting her or his trauma on you, or is it your trauma that's bubbling up? It doesn't really matter. What really matters, and this is for everything that I have found to be the most effective tool of all times, is to be embodied and to be able to identify in that moment what that feels like for you. First, that's step number one. How does it feel in your body? And step number two, if possible, to respond from this place of alignment, and to respond in this place and saying, oof, that hurt. I'm not saying you meant to hurt me. I'm not saying that you're doing this on purpose. And it's still, I received it in a way that hurt me. Is there another way that we can talk about this? Is there another possibility for us to have a conversation around this in a different way? Does that make sense, Julianne? Let me know in the comments. And for any of you out there who are listening, if that makes sense to you. So the question was, if someone triggers you, essentially, how do you identify if they're projecting trauma on you, or if it's your own trauma being aroused? Aroused? I think that's the word, aroused within you, right? For me, I am really trying to listen better. I feel like I have lost how to really honestly do this, Carrie. For me, I am really trying to listen better. I feel like I have lost the lost how to really honestly do this. I hear you, Carrie. Yeah. Well, it's a skill. It's a practice. It's not easy. It's not easy to be in those conversations when someone triggers us, because when you're triggered, your nervous system goes off regulation, right? You're deregulated. You're in a state of either freeze, fight back, or flight, right? You want to disappear. That's what happens when somebody triggers us. So if you're in that stage, Carrie, if you're still in that stage of receiving it that way and it's hard for you to deal with, my suggestion would be to simply say, hey, I'm feeling really triggered right now, and I need to take a moment to process this. Can we talk about this later? Does that make sense, Carrie? Let me know. Yeah. So if you're in a relationship when you're being triggered, notice how you feel instead of reacting immediately into, an argument, or saying something like, what'd you say? The hell with you, that escalates, of course, confrontation, and it doesn't feel good. So my recommendation would be to honor how you're feeling in that moment. And I know that there are many scenarios, okay? This is a general invitation to explore if it feels right for you. If you're feeling triggered, if somebody triggers you, to pause. The first thing in most situations is to pause. Even if somebody compliments you, it's great to intake the compliment and to pause. So if you feel triggered, take a moment to pause. And the way to take responsibility for yourself is to get out of that situation as fast as possible, because you don't want to stay in a toxic exchange where you might actually get more hurt. Do you know what I mean? Don't stay in an exchange where there's more toxicity. So you pause and you can say something like, hey, I feel triggered right now. Be honest. Be honest. I feel triggered right now by what you said. I just need a moment to process. And can we talk about this a little bit later? Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Thank you, Carrie, for responding. Yeah, it's a large topic. There's a lot to share. I have a lot more notes as usual, but it's almost 12 noon here. We're almost at the end of our hour today. So I wanted to first and foremost thank you. Thank you with all my heart. The pause is great. Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. I know I use it too all the time. Thank you for your comment. So my invitation for you for this week is to practice the art of the pause, especially when you are in communication, and especially around this idea of taking responsibility. I really want to invite you to journal around this. What does it mean for you to take responsibility? Where in your life might you be able to take more responsibility for yourself, better responsibility for yourself? And that doesn't mean to blame, shame yourself. They're very different things. I'm talking about taking responsibility from a heightened sense of awareness and consciousness, so that when there's a situation where you feel badly, or you feel that somebody said something about you, first pause and really explore, was it about you? Are you taking things personally? Sometimes we do take things personally. And can we practice forgiving ourselves for taking things personally? Because a lot of the time people will say things that trigger us, but it really has nothing to do with us. Remember, it's a lot about how they're feeling in that moment. And that's at large when you're in larger social circles. Sometimes people say silly things. When it's a more intimate relationship, it's a little bit different because there's usually hurt or misunderstanding or miscommunication. So this week, I would love for you to practice the art of the pause and see how that works out for you. And when you speak to someone, remember this phrase, mindful communication. I love to call it the art of mindful communication. When you open your mouth, are you saying something that adds to the situation? And here's one of my I was going to say hard and fast rules, but that sounds a little hard. So maybe hard, or not hard, but a useful guideline, I hope. I always remind myself to leave a place better than I found it. What can I do to leave this conversation better than how I found it? And usually the answer to that is when I am gentle, when I'm caring, when I'm loving, I tend to leave a place better than I found it. Or certainly that's my intention. So this week, the art of the pause, and how can you leave a place, person, or situation better than you found it? And that, my friends, includes you. Have positive, tender, kind conversations with yourself. Acknowledge yourself for all the work that you're doing. Acknowledge yourself for being here with me today, for taking the time to be in the sacred circle, for exploring. I'm so grateful that you're here. I hope this was helpful. I hope that some of what I shared might be useful to you. You can always email me at AnneMarie@artofalignmentacademy.com. You can visit my website at artofalignmentacademy.com. I have more resources and information on the work that I do. I do this every Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and I send a newsletter, a short video newsletter every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. with the topic that I'm going to be talking about the following week. So it's a little preview, it's a teaser into what I'm going to be talking about the following week. So you can sign up for my newsletter on my website, artofalignmentacademy.com. You can respond in this group, in the private Duchêne Method Facebook group. Continue the interaction, ask questions, support one another, be curious. Remember, the first thing is to be curious over time. Let's develop a healthy, loving, grounded, supportive environment here. I welcome you all. And if you have anybody that you think might benefit from these Q&As, from these circles of creation, please ask them to request to be invited into the group. And I communicate with all of them. Unless I know you personally and I immediately approve you, I communicate with people and I ask them, hey, why do you want to be in this group, right? Because we want to be here to support and love and engage and expand our network of really beings of light, of beings who are really working to raise the level of consciousness in our homes, with ourselves, in our homes, in our communities, in our environments. So thank you for being here. Makes sense. The pause is great. Thank you, Anne-Marie. It's a pleasure to get these golden nuggets, true wisdom. Thank you, Paula. I love you. Thank you for being here. Lots of love and blessings from the Caribbean. I love it. Thanks for being here today, Gillian. And I hope to see you next week and expect my newsletter on Thursday morning. Much, much love and many blessings to all of you. Bye.